Armies, a server that has sparked a lot of interest in my channel recently. It seems everyone would like to learn more about this server, as my Anarchy video has gained lots of attraction, so I've decided to tell you guys another story about my time on Armies. If you have not watched my last video on Armies, please go watch it, as it is a much deeper look into Armies geopolitics and relations. It will be in the description down below. I'm going to briefly explain what Armies is, so if you already know, just skip forward about like 20 seconds. Armies is a Minecraft game type where the purpose is to survive with the little resources you have on a super flat dirt world. There's a diamond generator at spawn, and you can do everything except hack. Raid, fight, steal, lie, you name it, that can be done. Now that I'm done with the brief introduction, let me tell you guys about a group that I was in before Anarchy, before the ultimate destruction of Armies. In October of 2018, not much was going on in Armies. There were some wars between the likes of Atlas, Arabia, and Beta, but not much other than that. At that point, my group had been playing for a few months now, and we were starting to get a bit bored. It was the same fighting against the same groups over and over again. This is when my obsession began for looking for bases. If you watch the Anarchy video, you will know how dedicated I was to finding bases. There were a few kinds of bases in Armies which I will talk about in this video. There were vaults, which were small and hidden underground to protect valuables such as god sets and other valuable items. There was also farming bases, which were normally above ground with villager breeders and iron golem farms. And there were some hybrid bases. Hybrid bases were a mix between the two, portions of the base hidden underground and a farm on top of it. Farming bases were easy to make above ground and were also easily replaceable, hence them not being hidden well. Most people had a few farming bases, so that if one got griefed, they would still have more. One day, I was bored, and I decided to do some base hunting. So, I started flying around, and eventually I found a huge farming base. It had mob farms, multiple iron golem farms, and lots of villagers. This was, at the time, the biggest base I found, and I was obviously very excited about it. I waited for a bit to invite my friends Alora and Will to help me explore and grief the base, but then, we had an idea that many other griefers would use down the line on Armies. Normally, when you raid a base, you would take some items, break some stuff, and kill all of the mobs. We wanted to do something interesting, and that's when it hit us. What if we just completely erased the base? I don't mean world editing it out or anything, but what if we broke every block by hand and made it look like nothing had ever been there? I mean, it was a super flat dirt world, so we wouldn't really have to worry about the terrain. Erasing a base could destroy some of the relations on Armies, as the people who lived there would just be left confused, with no trail to find out who did it. On Armies, people knew how each group griefed, so when you raided a base, it would be quite obvious who did it. And with destroying every single block at the base, they would just be left confused at who even did it. We then started gathering multiple pickaxes, shovels, and axes in order to completely erase this gargantuan base. We then have thought of something even better. What if we made this a habit? What if we made a group that would just erase bases, and no one knew who they were? It was the best plan at the time, and a true inspiration for the later group called Anarchy. There was one glaring problem with our group goal though. It relied on people not knowing who we were, so if someone happened to log on while we were destroying their base, it would be over. We thought about invis potions, but realized how expensive that would be, as some bases could take upwards of an hour to destroy. There were 3 of us too, so it would be costly over time. We started out by destroying the crops at the base, as well as replacing the water source blocks with dirt. We also had to untill every piece of farmland. We hopped on a few of the source blocks, but then we just decided to place blocks on the water, so basically they all just decayed over time. Then we killed every single villager in sight, and destroyed the entire villager farm / trading center, as well as replacing the entire floor of it with dirt. We then broke the cobblestone generator, which is surprisingly very important on Armies, as that's literally the only way to get cobblestone. You can't just go underground and mine for it, because the world's just dirt. We then started the longest part of the Erasure, destroying the iron golem farms. Most bases on armies only had one, and this one had two, so that meant it was going to take even longer to erase the base. This bit took us like 35 minutes to complete. I mean, it wasn't really difficult to do, it was just very time consuming and kind of boring with just breaking a bunch of stone blocks. While I mainly destroyed the iron golem farms, my friends worked on flattening out the land and also destroying the hundreds of torches placed around. Surprisingly though, during the entire event, no one from the base logged in. One thing though we were afraid of was that we found this huge base and yet had no idea who it belonged to. It could be Erasure, it could be a random single player person. We had one idea of it belonging to a person named Dark Algorithm, as he was known for making many of the huge farming bases on the server, but we were not 100% sure. After I finished destroying the grinders, then came one of the worst experiences I've had griefing: the torches. This didn't seem like a problem at first, but after destroying all the blocks at the base, we realized that there were hundreds of these little things. We grabbed water buckets and flew around placing water to massacre these torches, and after 15 minutes or so, we had destroyed them all. One other problem occurred though. We used dirt instead of grass to rebuild the landscape, and the entire map was grass. We had two options. We could either wait for the grass to grow, which would be as painful as watching paint dry, but we could also just dig out the dirt and replace it with grass. Alora, Will, and I were very tired at that point because it was late at night and we just wanted to get off. So what we decided on was that Alora would AFK high above the base overnight so that the grass would be able to grow. We prayed that they wouldn't see her, but then we logged off for the night. I logged in the next day to do my daily goals such as grind for more armor, farm some crops, and just have some fun. Luckily, Alora woke up early enough and was able to log off before anyone noticed her. Later in the day though, a player named ZachKO4 logged on, and started saying in chat that Dark's base was just completely gone. At that moment, I knew it was the base that we had erased. And it turns out our suspicions were correct. It was Dark Algorithm's base. Keep in mind, Zach's army and the army I was in, Atlas, were at war at the time, so this was amazing for our war. I started screenshotting what he was saying and sent it into the army Discord, and my friends thought it was hilarious. Zach kept saying about how his base had disappeared, but then Dark Algorithm himself also logged on to inspect what happened. It was even better when he was confused at what had happened. We were celebrating in our glory when suddenly a mod logged on. Fun fact about armies is that there were rarely ever staff online, so when one got on, it was a pretty big deal. This mod's name was Dan the Beast, and both started asking Dan about what had happened and why their base was reset. Yes, reset. They thought some staff reset it or the chunk glitched, which was really funny to us. But then, the worst possible thing could have happened. On the server network, staff are not allowed to tell who raided a base on PvP servers, which armies was. But breaking the rules for a good old friend, the staff member used Core Inspect and told him that it was one of our members, Alora. Alora was not really known for fighting or anything, she was just a farmer, so they were shocked. She had a connection to Atlas, so they messaged me asking about it, until the staff exposed Will for griefing as well. This was the worst possible outcome, and we were a bit angry that the staff abused his powers. I admitted Atlas was at fault for the griefed base, but surprisingly, they weren't even mad. Zach and Dark were actually very chill with us doing it, as they found some humor in it as well. Of course, it raised tensions between our armies, but it really didn't end up with any arguing. After this, we made multiple tickets reporting the staff, but in old Performium fashion, they didn't do anything. This marks the end of the MystS, a failed group as we got exposed in our first raid, but also the main inspiration for Anarchy 4 months later. I hope everyone enjoyed this video, but for now, I'm gonna take my leave. See ya!